Hey everyone, so today in this video I'm going to show you how to drag, drop, swap, add and delete elements within this container. So to basically give you an overview, I'm going to click on the plus icon, I'm going to click on any image, the image is going to get dropped here. I can hold that image, I can drag it and I can place it anywhere in the container. You can also see this nice animation. And then if I hover on the image, you see a cross icon which comes. If I click on it, it deletes the image. So basically now I can keep adding any image on the plus icons. And if you want to swap any two images, so I'll just take this and I'll place it on top of this image and they both are going to switch positions. If I take this and I drop it over here, they're going to switch positions, and I can add more images if I want. Sorry, this is the same image. I'm just going to add a different image to avoid confusion, and you can swap any images that you want. You can even fill this box completely with images, and now if you want to delete everything, you can also delete them as well. And we are going to be building this purely using vanilla JavaScript. So yeah, let's get on with it. Alright, so to start off, this is just my project basic setup. It's pretty simple. We have an index.html file, main.js and style.css. I'm going to use the mh snippet to add the doc type HTML and heading tags. After this, I'm going to go to my meta, like under the meta, and I'm going to add the CSS file. So all we have to do for that is this. We have to specify rel, and underneath that, inside that, we have to write style sheet, and then we can give an href of the file directory for the CSS, and that's nothing but style.css. all right, after this I'll just go ahead, wait one second, I just forgot to close this. And then after this, I'm going to copy a snippet that's going to be the fonts that I get from the Google fonts. I'm just going to copy paste it over here. I had it copied already, I just pasted it here. You can go ahead and take it from here as well, or I'm just going to add the links in the description, or you can even select any font of your choice. And then after that, we have this title document. We just gotta go down to the body, and I'm going to add a div over here. I'm going to add a div, and I'm going to give it a class of container. And within that div of container, I'm going to give another div, and that's going to have a class of grid container. Let's just write it like this. Alright, so as you can see here, I again forgot to add this to close it. So yeah, now this is all our index. No, we also have to add the script file that we have. We are going to add it right here at the bottom. I'm going to go to the bottom of the bottom div over here. Actually, I think we need to add this right within the bottom of the div. I'm going to add the script tag, and that's going to point to the index.js which we have, and I'm going to specify the src, which is nothing but equal to the main.js, sorry, not the index.js, /main.js. Alright, so this is all we have for the index.html file. Basically nothing much, but just a container with a grid container underneath it, and rest all is pretty basic and self-explanatory. After this, I'm going to go to the main.js, and we are going to start writing our vanilla.js code to bring up the functionality of the website. So what I'm going to do over here first is I'm going to try and select this grid container that we have. So before we select that, I'm thinking let's just give some styling to our body and the container that we have over here. So let's go right over here. Let's add the styles for body. It's going to be a pretty simple style. We're just going to add the background. It's going to be black. We're going to give it a font family of Roboto, and then sans serif, and we're going to go and add overflow of a hidden. And after this, I'm just going to style the container as well. Container is going to have a display of flex and a justify content of center. We are doing this because in the final build, as you saw, we wanted everything to be centered. So that's why I'm adding this. And I'm going to add a height of 100 vh. Alright, so this is all we need for now. Actually, I think we also have the grid container, right? So let's give a grid container style as well. So grid container is nothing but this is basically a grid, 3 by 3 grid. So I'm going to add the styling for that. It's pretty simple. We just have to add display grid. All I'm gonna do is I'm going to add display of grid, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add a width of fit content, because the boxes which are going to be added underneath, I want the main grid to fit those boxes. And then I just want to add grid template columns. Since it's going to be a 3x3 structure, I'm going to add auto, and then I want a gap of 2px and a border radius of somewhere around 10px. Alright, so this is all we require for now, and then I'm going to go to the main.js file, and I'm going to start writing the functionality. I'm going to start writing the selectors so that I can select this container and all, and after that we are going to go ahead and write the functionality. So all we have to do first is just define grid container. Sorry, I've been spelling quite badly today. Write grid container, and we are going to select it. I'm going to use query selector for this, and I'm going to write here dot grid container. All right, and then after that I'm going to go ahead and make the boxes that we have, like this structure. So for that I'm going to use 2 for loops, and I'm going to loop through everything that we have. So what I'm going to do is let I equals to 0. This is pretty simple. It's just going to make a matrix structure that we have, and then I'm gonna create another for loop, let j equals to 0, j less than 3, j plus plus, and then we can make variables for the boxes. We need to create these boxes, so I'm going to name them something called empty box, and then document dot create element div, and we are going to append all this in the end to the grid container that we have. And then one thing to note is to add this plus icon, basically I'm going to be using the input type file element. So the file element adds a button over here, right? But we don't want that button. We want this plus icon on top of that. So we have to style that button, that add button, to make it look like this. So for that we have to add our custom styles. All right, so first of all what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an add item constant over here. I'm also gonna create it as an element, which will be nothing but a div, and we are going to custom style this as the plus icon that we have. And then I'm going to do const file document dot create element. It's going to be nothing but an input. Okay, because this input type file is going to give us the functionality to add the images and all that, and then we are just going to style it on top of that. The functionality is obviously going to be given by the HTML. And then all we need to do is just do empty box dot class name equals to, let's give it a class name of empty, and then we can go down and do the same for add icon. We can give it a class name of something like what do we give it? We can give it add icon, and then I can give add icon dot inner text, and that will be nothing but plus, the plus which we want to style later on, and then file dot type, which is nothing but equals to file, and then file dot class name, which is nothing but equal to class name actually, and we are also going to equate this to nothing but file. All right, after this we gotta append all this into the grid container. So grid container dot append child, and then we have to append the empty box first. So this is going to first of all add just a normal box, and then within that box, that empty box, we are going to append the child, which is going to be the add icon, because as you can see within this box we have this add icon. And then after that, within the empty box, we are again going to append nothing but the file. So the file is going to take a width and height of complete 100% within the box, and then we are going to just somehow hide that button of the file, and we are going to make the plus icon also take 100% width and height. So whenever we click this, it's going to click on the file, but it will seem like you're just clicking the plus icon. Let's just save this for now, and then let's just add the styles for these, for the empty add icon and the file that we have. So let's go to our style.css, and then let's go down somewhere over here, and then and then let's select .empty position relative, justify content center. Actually, we need the same thing over here. I'm gonna place this whole thing right over here to center everything. Wait, I don't think we require this in empty, so I'm just gonna go back, and all we need to do is, okay, let's just style the empty class name which we have. I'm going to add it a position of relative, sorry, my bad. And then after that I'm going to go and add a display of inline block, and then a height of 200 px. So basically those boxes are going to be a height and width of 200 px. After that I'm going to give a border radius of nothing but 10 px. After that a margin of nothing but somewhere around 2 px, and then I'm going to give a border of solid. I don't think we need the border over here, and we can just add a background color background over here, because we want to add this particular styling, right, where you can see there's a circle of different color over here, and over here it's a different color. So it's basically nothing but a radial gradient. So for that, all we're going to do is we're going to select radial gradient, and we're going to add 2 colors for that. First is going to be this color code 9F9, and the other one's gonna be nothing but 4E54FF6B. Alright, we are good to go here. And to show you the progress, I'll just go live over here. This is going to do nothing, but it's going to open the server. Yes, so you can see this is what we have as of now. So basically we have added the background color which we wanted, and this is what I was talking about. Since as you can see here, sorry, I mistakenly clicked that. So you can see over here in the main.js, I have created a file and have appended that within the grid container, and the grid container is nothing but this entire thing over here. So within that I have appended the plus and the file. This is the file input. If you click on this, we get to select images. So basically we don't want this, we want this plus that you see over here. We want this plus to take this entire width and height, and we just want to hide this, but we also want to ensure this input takes 100% of width and height, so that when we click over here, it's going to use this function, the choose file functionality, but it's going to appear that we are just clicking the plus sign. I hope you get what I mean. So let's go ahead and style for that. What I'm gonna do next is I'm going to add for the add icon. Going to add here we can add the entire this part, because you want everything to be centered within the box. Alright, and then after that I'm going to give it a position of absolute, and then a color of nothing but it should be white, and then after that I can give it a font size of nothing but 80 px, and we can give it a height of 100% and a width of 100% as well, and I'm going to give it a font weight of somewhere around 400. So what does this give us? Alright, you can see the plus icons are centered and they are exactly like this. This is the final build, and now we just have to hide this. Alright, and we have to hide this. Now if I click on this plus icon, nothing happens. So we need to make sure that this choose file also takes 100% and it stays at front, so that whenever we click this, choose file is going to open the file, but it's going to be invisible. Alright, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to select dot file, and I'm just going to give it a height of 100% and a width of 100% as well, and I'm going to select as an opacity of nothing but 0. Alright, let's see what we get now. So now when I click anywhere over here, you can see the images are opening, because the button, which was the choose a file button, is also 100% in width and height. So that's for this. So we almost have it. So we have the design covered similar to this. Now we have to add the functionality to drag, drop add and delete the elements. So let's go ahead, and also swap the elements. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so in order to get started with the drag and drop functionalities, we need to first find a way to add the image within each of these blocks. So this is nothing but an empty div, right? So we need to add another div which is going to contain the image into this empty block. So what we can do now is, so we are basically doing that so that once we add another div with the image, we can, whenever we drag or drop, we can select that particular div which will contain that image and place it anywhere in this container, because we do not want to move this empty div that we have. We want to move what's present within it. So that's why we need to add another div which will have the image within it, and we can perform the drag drop functionality on that. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so what we need to do is we can just add an event listener here for the file. Add event listener, and I'm going to catch the change event, and I'm going to pass a function, and I'm going to call a function over here. Let's call it get image data, and that is basically going to give us the image details, and we're also going to send the empty box that we have over here. So this get image data function is going to give us the image's URL so that we can preview that image inside the containers. And this change event is provided by every input, and since file is an input, so we get this change event. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on top, and I'm going to declare two variables, empties, and I'm also going to declare something called choose file. So empties is going to contain nothing but all the empty boxes, and choose file will basically just refer to the file we choose. So here the empty boxes get set. So what I can do is I can go here. After they get set, I'm going to populate the empties variable with all the empty boxes that has been created. I'll do get query selector document.query selector all, and I'm going to select all the dot empty. And then after that I can go to choose file. I'm going to set that as well to document dot query selector all, and the dot file. All right, this should be just one dot over here. After that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the get image data function that I have mentioned on top. I'm going to make this an arrow function, and this requires nothing but the file and the empty box in the params. After that, now we are going to start writing the function. So first of all, I want to get the file. So what's going to happen is I'm going to make a variable named get file, and then I'm going to equate it to nothing but, okay, wait, here I'm getting an error. This is mostly because it needs a equal to sign. So okay, so now I'm going to write a variable get file. This get file is going to get the file that we have when we select it. So what I'm talking about is when I do this, all right, wait a second, I'm getting 3 circles. I'm getting only 3 boxes over here instead of all the other ones. Now why is that? Alright, so this error is because we have this add event listener listed over here, but we should keep it inside this instead. Let's save it and check. And alright, you can see all the boxes. That is because if I declare it outside of this for loop, then not all the files get the event listener. In fact, none of the files get the event listener attached to it, because the files are variable is declared over here. So if I write it outside of this, then there is no file that exists to take the event listener. So that's why it outputs an error. So what I was talking about next is the get file. So basically in this get image data, so whenever I basically click on this, the change event listener fires, and then when this fires, it goes to get image data, and I'm going to it passes the file for that particular box, and then I'm going to get the file using file.files of 0, and then I have to convert that file into an image. So first of all, once I convert, I basically have to get the URL from that file, and then I have to add it, put it within the src tag of an image. So I also need to declare an image variable that's going to be nothing but document dot create element, and you guessed it right, it's nothing but an image. and then after that I need to declare this fill variable that I talked about. So this image is going to go into a fill div, and that altogether is going to go within the empty box div, because as I said, when we drag, we don't want to be dragging the empty box, we want to be dragging what is inside it, which is nothing but the fill. And then fill will be equal to document dot create element, and it's nothing but a div. All right, and then what we can do is we can do empty box dot append child, and we can append the fill. All right, cool. So now empty box has fill, and then we can go and add the class names to the image as well. So class name equals to, you can name an image, and then we gotta go to the fill dot class name, and that's also going to be nothing but fill. And then we can, and then as we notice, this fill will basically have a delete icon on top, right? So you can go and see here, whenever I add an image and I hover on this, it's going to have a delete on top. And this is also not going to be attached to the empty box, it's going to be attached to the fill which is inside it. So let's go and do that as well. So what I can do is I'll just declare a function over here that will be nothing but delete icon, and within that delete icon we'll pass the fill and the file, and based on that we'll try to, you know, so whenever we add the delete icon within this function, so it will be for that respective file we are respective fill and the file we are clicking on. So that's why we are passing fill and file over here, so that it can know that this is for that particular div. And then we can go to cons, we can go and create another variable, reader equals to new file reader. And what this is going to do is basically this is going to help us convert the image that we get into a URL so that we can preview it later. And then I'm going to use reader dot on loaded, and then I'm going to assign it to a function, and then I'm going to write image.src equals to reader dot result. So this is provided to us by JavaScript itself, and this onloaded function, this onloaded event is also a property of the reader. So whenever the image is added, so basically when I click on the plus icon and add the image, and then it checks whenever the reader has onloaded, which it checks on its own once we add the image, and once it's loaded we will right after that populate the image src with the reader.result. So now we have an image tag with the appropriate src. Then we can just right after that we'll just write an if statement, if condition, and in if condition we can check that if we have the get file. If we don't have the get file, then there's no point doing this, doing what we're going to do after. So if we have the get file, then we are only then we are going to convert the reader which we have to a URL. So we're going to do read as data URL, then get file, and then we are going to go to fill dot append child image. All right, so we did set it over here, but then if we have the get file, only then we are going to append it within the fill, otherwise there's no point doing that. So after that we can add after this, once we have added appended the image into the fill div, what we can do is we can finally go ahead and add the drag event listeners which we have on the fill div. So let's add that. But before I add that, I just want to show you about the drag events if you are not aware of that. So it's pretty simple. You just go and click, oh sorry, I just clicked this. It's pretty simple. You just go and click it's pretty simple. You just go and click drag events HTML, and then you can see this over here, HTML drag and drop API. And then if you go down and read the docs, and there are these events, drag, drag in, drag enter. They're pretty self-explanatory. All this does is when you use drag start, when I start dragging, that's when this event gets triggered. When I drag over means when I am going over any container, then that's when drag over gets triggered. Drag end means when I've stopped dragging. Drag, there is something also called drag drop, on drop basically. Yeah, so when I drop this on any container, that's when that will be fired. So we can make use of all these events and create the next functionalities, which is which makes things pretty much simple. So thanks to JavaScript for providing all these events. Let's go ahead and add that now. So in the fill, I'm just going to add two event listeners. Add event listener. One is going to be nothing but the drag start, and it's going to have a drag start function which we will create after this. And then I'm going to copy this thing, and then I'm going to place it here, and we're going to add another event listener which is going to be nothing but drag end. Sorry for the wrong spelling. And then we are going to assign a function drag end. All right, and then there's one more thing we need to focus on, this add delete icon, drag start and drag end. So let's just make these functions. First of all, add delete icon is everything's going to be an arrow function, and then it's going to take these two parameters. Let's just pass that over here, and I'm going to make the other two functions, which is going to be drag start. It's going to take in nothing most probably, and the next one will be nothing but the drag end. Let's save this. We are going to write these functions soon. Before we do that, I'm just going to go ahead and add the image and fill stylings that we have, so that we can check if the image is coming inside the container or not. So to do that, we are going to go to the CSS file that we have, and then here I'm going to go down and I'm going to write the dot fill, and I'm going to add the CSS for that, nothing but position absolute, and then a height of nothing but 200 px. It will be the same height and width as the empty over here, because we don't want anything to be coming out, protruding out, or going within. So height and width will be same. The top will be 0 px, and the left will also be 0 px, and we will add a cursor pointer, and we can add a border radius as well, border radius of nothing but 10 px. All right, and then after this we can go ahead and add the image stylings that we have. Dot image display nothing but block, then a width of 100%, and then a height of 100% as well. Should take the entire fill's width and height, then a border radius of 10 px, and then an object fit of cover. Okay, so we are now going to go and check if we can see the image. I'm going to click over here. I'm going to click image, and oh, it seems like we are not getting the image. Let's just console log our errors and see what's the matter. You can already see here that reference error, new file reader is not a function at get image data. Let's go to our main.js. Where is new file reader? Okay, so this should be new file reader like this, and then what, and this I guess should be on load end. Once the image has loaded, completed its loading, then we want to append this to the src. Let's go back, and then let's add an image. Seems like there's another error, reader.read as data URL is not a function. Let's go down, read as data URL. Okay, it's my bad. This should all be in capital. Read as data URL. So now let's go ahead and check it out. I'm going to go and add an image, and all right, you can see the image is getting added. It's working all fine, and let me try to add it somewhere else. All right, see, the image is being added. Now what we need to do next is we need to be able to add the cross icon on top of this fill div, so that we can delete the particular image. So let's go ahead and do that. So for that we need to populate the add delete icon function over here that we have. So let's go and start working on that. All we have to do here is we can just make a variable, and then we can use the selectors that we have. No, first of all, before doing the selectors, we need to create the icon, right? So we need to create the element, and that's nothing but the div, and after that we can attach an event listener to this. So basically delete icon dot nothing but add event listener, and then we'll look for the click, because when we click on the icon we want it to delete, and then we can just pass it a function of on delete button click, and I'm going to pass some parameters over here, which is going to be nothing but the fill and the file that we get from here. So because when I click on delete click, we want to delete that particular fill div which contains the file within it, right? So now we just need to go and create the on delete button click function. It's pretty simple. And to pass in both the parameters, it's going to be an arrow function, and all we have to do here is once we click it, we're going to come here and all we're going to do is fill dot remove. It's as simple as that. And after that we also need to make the file dot value as nothing, as empty. Okay, so this file dot value basically means that the input file property, it attaches the file name to its value. So if I just do the fill dot remove it, the file dot value won't be removed, so I also have to specify this. So first of all, I'm going to populate the inner text of the delete icon. Oh sorry, I just wrote it inside this. We have to write it below that. I'm going to access the delete icon dot inner text, and then I'm going to equate it to nothing but a cross sign. This should be equal cross sign, and then I'm going to add a class name to our delete icon. That will be nothing but, let's just name it delete simply. Delete, we don't need a space over here. And then after this, let's go and I think this should be it. No, in the fill we also need to append the delete child. So the delete icon basically. So let's do that. Alright, so now we have delete icon appended to the fill. Let's see what we get now. Okay, we are not able to see anything because we need to add the styles for the delete icon. So we're going to go to the delete CSS and add some styling over there. So all we need to do now is we need to just basically add dot delete, and then we are gonna make the dot delete initially display none, because we don't want it to be displayed initially. Only when we hover we want it to be displayed. So after this, and when we hover on the fill div, that is only when we want it to be displayed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to fill, hover, and then I'm going to access the delete property, and I'm going to add the CSS for that. So when I hover on the fill, the display should be visible, so I'm going to make it block, and then I'm going to give it some styling, position of absolute, and display of flex, and then a justify content of center, align item center. This is so that the cross can be centered within that div, within the delete div. And then I'm going to give it a border radius. I'm going to give it a border actually of 2px solid, and then I'm also going to give a color to that actually, so white color. And then we are going to give it a border radius of 50% so that it stays round. And then let's give it a height and width as well, height of 35px. Let's keep the width also same. I think that would look better. And then we can give it a background color of red as we had in our styles. And then what we can do is we can give a top of -15 px and a right as well of -15 px. This is so that it can be at the top right corner of the fill div. And then we can give the x which we have inside a font size of basically somewhere around 20 px. And then after that we can also give it a font weight so that it looks a little thicker. So there is the font weight, and then we can give the x a color of nothing but white. And after that all we have to do is we can give it a z index of 10 maybe, so that it can stay right on the top and it can be visible and it won't be covered by the layers beneath it. And then we can add a box shadow on it. We'll just give it a slight dark shadow so that it looks a little cool. All we have to do is RGBA, we are going to go 0 0, and then we are going to give it an opacity of 0.19, and then I'm going to pass these numbers over here, px, and then I'm going to add the other color which we have. It's nothing but 0, 0, 0, and then 0.23 the opacity, and then we are going to add the pixels for that, which is nothing but 6 pixels and 6 pixels again. We are going to save this entire file, and now we are going to see that on hover if this style, the delete style, gets populated with this or not. I'll go here and I'm going to add an image, and this is only going to work if the image is there. I hover and there you go, you can see the icon coming right on the top right. You can see the icon coming there on the top right itself. This is exactly what we wanted. I'm going to add another image, and if I hover you can see it right there on the top right. So this is going to happen only when the image is added, because we have added this over here in the fill hover, not on the empty div hover. So yeah, so that's the reason why it comes only when we add the image. Alright, so now for the next steps we need to populate these functions, the drag start and the drag end, which has been added on the fill as the event listener. But before that we also need to make sure that we add the event listeners for the empty div that we have. So the empty div will have different event listeners compared to the fill, because the fill will have the image within it. So drag start and drag end will work when we basically hold the image down and we start dragging. That's why fill has drag start, the fill div has drag start and drag end. But we also need to add some event listeners to the empty box, which is this one, because we need to detect when that image we are dragging is entering this container, like any of these containers. So for that we also have to add event listeners to the empty div which we have. So let's go ahead and add a listener to each of those empty divs. So what we can do is we can just write a for loop, and in the for loop we can just do const empty of empties, and this empties is nothing, wait, I'll just show you. This empties is nothing but the one that I declared over here. It's selecting all the empty, and then what we have to do is we can just start adding each event listeners one by one. So empty.add event listener drag over, this will be nothing but we'll call a function drag over, and I'm going to copy this. And drag over is nothing but when I drag this image and I cross any of these divs, so that's when drag over gets called. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to add 3 other events. That will be nothing but drag enter, let's copy this here, and then drag leave, let's copy this here as well, and then the drop event which we have. This is going to be nothing but drag drop. Alright, okay, so before we move on ahead to write all the drag drop functions, let's make sure that this is made into a normal function instead of a arrow one, because we need to make use of this within here, and this is nothing but the object. It refers to the object where this function is attached to, and that is nothing but fill, because fill has a event listener which refers to the drag start function. So drag start is going to use this, and for that we need to pass this normal function so that it can reference to the fill object which we have. Similarly for drag end we're going to do the same thing. Alright, and now let's add all these functions which we have. I'm going to just copy this. Once again, before we move forward, I noticed one more mistake, that this drag start event which we have, it should have small s and not the capital one. You can go and read in the docs that it should be drag start with a small s, so keep an eye on that. And then after that we're going to add the remaining functions 1, 2, 3 and 4, and we are going to just put the names of it on this. Oops. Drag enter, drag leave, and drag drop. Let's make sure this also stays capitalized, just to keep the convention going through. Alright, so drag enter will come here, and drag leave with the capital L will come here. Alright, so now let's write these functions. So drag start is gonna happen when I start dragging the image. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to define 2 variables over here. One is nothing but selected, and the other one is nothing but parent of fill, and you're going to get to know why I did that. So when I start dragging, this function is going to run, and I'm going to make selected equals to this, and this is going to refer to this fill. All right, so after that I'm going to also populate parent of fill. That will be nothing but selected dot parent node. So upon doing selected dot parent node, I'm also getting the empty div. And then after that, all I have to do is I need to add a set timeout, and this set timeout is gonna do nothing but and the set timeout is gonna do nothing but it's gonna set the visibility of the image which we have to hidden. And why I'm doing this, and I'm gonna set the timer to be 0, and why I'm doing this is because when I start, I'm gonna go to the actual build. When I add an image and I start moving, I want this image to come out of this like div, right? I don't want the image to be sticking to that. For example, I'm gonna show you. This is our current build. I'm gonna just comment this out, the set timeout, and I'm going to add an image over here, and I'm going to try to take this out. So what happens here is this image still stays there while it gives the dragging sensation, but what we want to do is we want to even remove this div out of this image out of its div while we hover, so that it gives the effect that, you know, the image is actually being dragged. So for that we need to add this particular line, and on adding this line, you can see if I try to drag, it goes out of its container because I'm just setting the visibility to hidden when I start dragging. And why am I doing it inside a set timeout? It's because you can see if I do it directly, what happens. Just gonna add it here, and I'm gonna start dragging that, and you can see when I do it directly, it just goes away, just becomes invisible directly when I start dragging. That's because there is a delay when the event runs, and before the event runs, it just makes it hidden. So that's the problem. So that's why we are adding a set timeout. All right, so I'm just gonna remove this back. I'm gonna uncomment this. Okay, so we are done with the drag start function. Let's go to the drag over function next. And what drag over is going to do is we are going to first of all e.prevent default this, right? This should be e.prevent default. Every event listener gets the e attribute, so e.prevent default. And this e.prevent default is basically used so that the drag drop event listener works. So this is kind of written in their docs as well, that for the drop function to work, we need to specify e.prevent default in the drag over. This is mostly because when we are, for example, when I have an image over here and I move it like this, so drag over is being called continuously because I'm going over this empty div, right? So drag over is being called continuously. So when I do the drop, when I leave this and I do the drop, it wants that the drag over to be cancelled before it can be dropped. So even e.prevent default helps to add that functionality on it. And so after this, what we need to do is you can go to the main build, and you can see that when I hover on these, there's a red color background coming on top of those. So we need to add that. So basically when I'm going on drag over on any empty div, you can see a red color background. So let's go ahead and add that. So on drag over gets called many times, like thousands and thousands of times as we keep on hovering. So we need to do, what we need to ensure is that whenever we hover on the empty boxes, with the class name we append to add that red color doesn't get added over and over again. It gets added only once. So what we can do is we can do something like if not this dot class name dot includes, and we'll call the class name hovered. Then in that case we want to add this dot class name plus equal to space hovered. All right, so we have added a space hovered because we want to append to the class name which it already has, the existing class name, because it already has empty. So we are also going to add hovered after that. So this just ensures that if there is hovered, then we won't append it. If there are no hovered, then we are going to append a hovered. And then we will just style this. We'll just add this styling as well. Go to style.css. So we just need to add the hovered class over here and set the background as nothing but red. So now when I go to the browser and I try to add an image and I go, you can see the red color is coming on hovering, but now we need to remove these red parts. So let's do that because we only want it on the div we are hovering on. So to do that, we just have to go to our on drag leave, and here I'm going to add a class name of nothing but empty. Basically when I am dragging over, it's going to append hovered, but when I leave, it's only going to append the empty. Alright, and then I'm going to go to the drag drop, so that when I drop the image, what I need to do is I'm going to again make it empty. I'm going to make sure that the class name stays empty, and after that I'm going to take the selected.style dot visibility, and I'm gonna make it visible. If you remember, we had made it hidden when the drag was starting, and then after that we can just append this directly. We are going to do this dot append, and we are going to append the selected within that div. So now when I put an image over here and I try to hover it around, you can see it works perfectly fine. Only the container where I'm hovering on stays red. And now if I try to add another image, you can see that also happens, and I can also move this the same way. Now the last thing we need to do is you can also see here the delete functionality works. I clicked on the cross and it deleted. I'm just gonna add an image again. So now the last thing we need to do now is when I hover this image and I drop it anywhere, it works. But when I try to put it on top of this image, you can see it overlaps on it. And if I try to move it back, then it works. Then it works as expected. So the last thing we need to do is the swap functionality. So suppose we are trying to drop an image where there is an image already present. We need to make sure that they both swap their positions. So let's go and do that. Okay, so for swapping, all we need to do is basically we need to go to the drag enter function, and we need to check that if that image already exists in that container or not. If it already exists, then we swap, otherwise we don't. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to define two variables. One is does exist and another is swap element. I think we should just call it swap element. Yeah, swap element. All right, so now let's go to the drag enter function that we have. So I'm going to write e.prevent default, and then I'm going to do nothing but I'm going to just check if there is already an element existing over there, if there is already a fill div existing over there. So I'm going to do nothing but this dot query selector, and then I'm going to do dot fill. If that's not equal to null, that means that it exists over there. So I'm going to go and add the does exist to true, and then after that I'm going to create a variable const elements, and this is going to be nothing but this dot query selector all, and it's going to select the dot fill. And then I'm gonna go do nothing but I'm just gonna add the swap element to nothing but elements of 0. So I hope you understand why I did this. It's because if there is already an image existing, we are going to take that image as well. We're going to take that fill element and we are going to put it in swap element. And since when we do query selector all, if there is already an image present, there is always going to be just one image present right there in one container. So that's why we just have to select this 0, since this is going to return an array, and obviously only the first the 0th index will be filled, since there is always going to be one image in a particular container when we drag enter. And then we can just directly select the elements of 0 and store it in swap element. And then when we basically drop the element, we can do the actual swapping. So I think the drag enter, yeah, and also in the else over here, we need to make sure that the does exist becomes false. All right, so after this, when we drop, we need to basically execute the last swap function that we have, the swap functionality that we have. So what we can do is here the appending is happening. Before that we need to make sure the swap happens if there is already image existing. So we made the does exist true if it exists, if the image exists. So all we can do is if does exist, then all we need to do is the parent of fill. That's where this is going to come in handy. The parent of fill, append, and we're going to append the swap element. So all we have to do is just use parent of fill dot children, and then we are going to select the first one, and dot value equals to the empty string. So what this basically is doing is that when we drop the image, we are adding the class name to empty, we are setting the visibility of the selector to visible. That's as usual. And then if there already exists an image, we are appending the swap element, basically the image we're trying to swap, to the parent of fill. And parent of fill is nothing but the one we had set when we did the drag start. So that is nothing but the select.parent node. So what I mean by that is when I add an image over here and I drag start, so parent of fill will keep a reference to this particular div, right? And when I take this image to over here, and if there is already an existing image here, parent of fill will append this swap element over here. So when I put this here, this image which was already existing, the image which was already existing in this div will go to parent of fill, and parent of fill will be holding a reference to this div. So I hope you get what I mean. And then we are doing nothing but setting the parent of fill.children1.value to empty string. Now what that means is when we move this image from here to here, so basically the parent of fill of this image will be here, right? So we need to make sure that the file of that sets its value to empty. We do not want the file of this the value of this file to still remain the same name as this file. So that's why we just empty it out. And we have this children of one set. That's because if you check out over here, if I do a console log of parent fill children, you'll get to know what I'm talking about. So I'll just add an image over here and then another image over here, and I'll try to open my console and I'll swap these two. Alright, you see that when I swap, it's still not swapping. Now I think I know the reason behind this. Wait, you can see referencer E is not defined, line number 90. Let's go up to line number 90. Alright, you can see E is declared here, but it's not defined over here in the param. So we're just going to pass it. We're going to try to swap again. One image here, one image here. Now if I try to swap, alright, now you can see both of them swapped. So when they swapped, you can see that I'm getting this, the parent of children, and this, when I hover on this is referring to this particular div because we dragged from here, right? I'm going to show you again. I'm going to delete these two. I'm going to add an image here, another image here. I'm going to drag from here. So if I drag from here and replace it here, you can see this will always refer to this particular image. So I'll drag and place it here. Now when I hover on that parent of children, it should refer to this particular one because this image got dragged from here. So when I hover here, open this and I'll hover over here, you can see it's referring to this. So this image got dragged from here. So what happens is the value of this image will still be set over here. So we just need to empty that value, and that is not necessarily required, but it's good to empty that value since that image is no more there. So it's better to not even set its value over there. And since the input file is in the first index, that's why we access the children of one property and set its value to empty. And after that we also append the selected, and when selected is appended, it goes the image which was here goes over here. So I hope you got a clear understanding of what I was trying to explain. It's pretty self-explanatory, and so I guess mostly we have covered everything now. The swapping works fine, the deletion works fine. I can see the swapping is also going fine. I'm going to add another image over here. Let's try to swap these two. Right, it's working just all right. I can place this anywhere as well. The only thing that could be a bug is something like this. I'm going to show you. So basically if I hold an image and I try to go over here right in between, so now at this point you can see if I leave the image, it vanishes. Now why does that happen? I'll show you what's the reason behind that. So you can see when I take it in between, there is a small point, there is a certain region where none of the divs are being hovered, none of the divs background color is changing. So that's when I leave this image, it disappears. So that shouldn't happen. We don't want that. So basically what it means is the drag events which we have, they have a certain number of pixels set. Only then within that pixels, if it detects the container, only then it will drag there. But this is kind of buggy behavior, because if I leave it, it should at least take it to its natural position instead of completely removing the image. So how do we fix that? The fix for that is also pretty simple. What we need to do is we need to go to the drag end function which we had. So this occurs after the drag has completely ended, after we have dropped and the drag end gets called. All we need to do here is we need to add the this.class name equals to fill, and now's the main part. We need to just check if the selected dot style dot visibility equals to hidden, because in that case when the drag ends it makes it hidden, right? But we need to make sure basically when we keep it in between and we drop it, the drag end gets called after drop and we see that the visibility gets hidden. So when that happens, we are just accounting for that condition, and we are going to set selected dot style dot visibility to nothing but to visible. Alright, so that should be it. I hope that made sense. Now if I go here and I try to add an image, let's swap, it works fine. And the one we wanted to account for was when if we put this in between, previously it used to disappear, but now we expect that if we leave it if we put it in between and we leave it, it should go back to its original position. So if I leave it, there you go, you could see it went to its original position. So if I do it again, goes in between, and it used to disappear before, but when I leave it, it goes back to its original position. So that's all for this. Now if I try to add any more new images, let's try to add a new one over here. I try to swap any of them, you can see it works perfectly fine, just about how we wanted this. Alright, and if I want to delete the images, all we have to do is delete. And we can also, if you want, you can also populate all the images that are present over here. It will just look great. Let's see how that looks like, just for experimentation purposes. I hope you guys also watch anime. Where's the last image? Where's the last unique image? I guess there are two more unique images we need to add. Where is it? Naruto, and the last one would be Luffy. Alright, so this is how it looks finally, and we can even delete any images. As you saw, we just added it, so all the functionality works fine, the swapping, adding, deleting. So yeah, this is it for this video. I hope you guys got to gain a lot of knowledge regarding how these events are used in Vanilla.js and how can we manipulate them to create such amazing UI functionalities. So I hope you liked this video. If you did so, then please consider to like and subscribe. So yeah, see you in the next one.